that I got this up on its side, so you can see what I've done on the bottom with the shift linkage and everything else. So let's just start at the front. Well, I've got my front end that we built on. One of the things I want to show is now that I've got all this adjusted, if you use the grade 3 bolts, they do wear out after a few years, but you can replace them. But I have drilled a hole right here so I can put a cotter pin in. So once you get this set, even though it is a nylon locking nut, they do work themselves loose. So once you get it adjusted, drill a hole in it, put a cotter pin in it, or use a castle nut. I've done the same here, everything on the front end. I won't do it with the heim joints. They don't seem to come loose the way the heim joints work, but there's a lot of drag on these pieces and that nut will spin itself loose, even with a nylon nut. So let's talk about bolts and nuts while we're there. When you're putting this thing together, you know, this is a Briggs & Stratton. They vibrate like crazy. So spend an extra $10 and get bolts and nylon nuts on all of them. So they'll still work themselves loose, but not as fast as just like a regular bolt and nut, even with a lock washer. So that's just something that's going to save you some heartache in the future. Save you some problems when you're trying to run it around the track or at the track. So it's a little bit more money, but it's worth it. So the other thing I want to show here is I've got my pedals set up and I've created these pedal stops. Now I like to do this. It helps me adjust the pedal as far as front and backwards where I want it to sit. And then the other thing is you know, you're always sidestepping that pedal. And so instead of having it just slam back, so I create these little stops, and they're adjustable. And all it is a piece of 3/4 inch flat bar, and I bend it, drill a hole in it, and then I've welded a nut on it, and then I use this nylon lock nut on the back side. So it's adjustable. So that's the clutch side right there. And then I've done the same on the brake side, if you can see that right there. So just a little adjustable stop. And then I've got that helper spring right there to keep the pedal, when it's in rest, tied against the stop so it's not bouncing around. And then of course you've got your clutch spring right here. The other thing that I've done is I've put shims on both sides. I've got washers on both sides of my linkage here. So that keeps it moving freely. And then I think the other thing that I want to show here is I want to show this clutch finally assembled. I've got my E-clip here, that's factory. Also on my steering I've got a flat washer, and then I've got this collet. Now that spins, but it keeps the steering wheel from bouncing up and down. So, and then of course I've got my steering linkage, which we've already gone over. So I think that's about it. The other thing that I want to show is you can kind of tell the only thing that's really protruding, other than the steering arm, which has to be down so low, is my brake lever. My brake linkage just barely comes out from underneath the frame right here. So I've experienced having things hanging down below the frame quite a bit. The rules will allow you to do it. I've also hung it up on trailers, and it happened to be the day that I was heading to the race, and I was scrambling to pull it all apart at the racetrack and get it straightened out. So from there I like to tuck everything up as much as possible. So you get these things low enough, they'll drag. So, and I think that's about all. Oh yes, one other thing. I've got my jack shaft apart. Throughout this whole build I've talked about the jack shaft using this quill assembly. I just want to show this with it apart so you'll understand. And all this is this spindle piece right here with keyway in it, and the keys are right there, and then the two identical size pulleys. So the reason I do that is then I can get my gear ratio that I need by changing either the pulley on the transaxle or the pulley on the motor. If I need some finer adjustment, I could change one of these out. These are 4.5, so I could go to a 4 and get it right dialed in. But I usually like to leave these the same, so you it behaves like it's not even there. So you can get an adjustable pulley for the motor. They work well. Some of our racers have them and like them. And that would be my next solution. I'd get the adjustable pulley, and I wouldn't mess with this much on the jack shaft. But I did want to show that apart. And then we use this MTD quill for the bearing assembly for that. So I think that's about it. And there's a good shot of my adjustment. Now the light's not helping. But so anyway, all the linkage is there. So I'm just at the final assembly of this. I got a few more things to go over with you. And we'll talk to you soon.